The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its walls stretched upward for hundreds of meters, covered in gold and crystal. 12 massive thrones sat in a circle, each one designed for a different species. The eldest races of the galaxy had ruled from this chamber for 10,000 years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched young species crawl out of their home planets and take their first steps into the stars. They believed they had seen everything. They had never seen anything like. What was about to happen? Ambassador Yuna walked into the chamber alone. She was a small woman with black hair tied back in a simple knot. Her face showed no emotion. She wore the plain gray uniform of the human diplomatic corps, without medals or decorations. Compared to the towering aliens around her, she looked like a child who had wandered into a room full of giants. The council members barely looked at her. Humans had only joined the galactic community 40 years ago. They were still considered newcomers, primitives who had barely figured out how to travel between stars. Most of the elder species saw them as clever animals at best. Useful workers at worst. High Arbiter Thesix clicked his mandibles impatiently. He was an insectoid creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with a shell that gleamed like polished bronze. His species had ruled the council for the last 2,000 years. He was not used to waiting for anyone, especially not a human. "Speak quickly, Ambassador," he said. "The council has important matters to discuss." Yuna stood in the center of the chamber and looked up at the 12 thrones. She took a slow breath. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but clear. 3 years ago, the Vorath swarm attacked our colony worlds in the Outer Rim. We sent messages to this council every day for 6 months. We begged for help. We offered to pay any price, make any deal. We asked only for ships, weapons, anything that could help us defend our people. The council members shifted uncomfortably. They remembered those messages. They remembered ignoring them. "The Vorath killed 3 billion human beings," Yuna continued. "Men, women, and children. They consumed entire planets. They turned our cities into feeding grounds. And this council did nothing. You watched it happen. When we asked why, you called it a regional matter. You said it was not your concern." "High Arbiter," Thesix waved one of his long arms dismissively. "The Vorath have always been a threat. Every species must learn to defend itself. This is the way of the galaxy. We cannot protect everyone from every danger." "I understand," Yuna said. Her voice remained calm. "You made your choice. Now humanity will make ours." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She placed it on the floor in front of her. "This contains the official notice of withdrawal. Humanity is leaving the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. All human personnel, technology, and resources will be removed from Council space within 30 standard days. All treaties and agreements are hereby canceled. All joint projects are terminated." For a moment there was silence. Then slowly, laughter began to spread through the chamber. The council members found this very funny. The little humans thought they could survive alone, without the protection of the elder races, without access to the great trade networks. It was adorable. Counselor Bryn of the Kethrani, a tall being with silver skin and 4 arms, smiled down at Yuna with something like pity. "Ambassador, please think carefully. Your species is still young. You need us. Where will you go? What will you do? The galaxy is dangerous, and you are so very small." Yuna looked at her without expression. "We survived for 200,000 years on our homeworld before we knew you existed. We crossed the void between stars with ships held together by hope and metal. We built colonies on worlds that tried to kill us every day. And when the Vorath came, we fought them alone for 6 months without any help from anyone." She paused and let her words sink in. "We are small. We are young. We are, as you love to remind us, primitives. But we have never needed you. We only wanted your friendship. We only wanted to be part of something greater. That is over now." "High Arbiter." Thesix leaned forward, his compound eyes glittering with amusement. "And what do you think will happen when you leave? The Vorath will return. Other predators will smell your weakness. You will come crawling back within a year, begging for our protection." Yuna turned to look directly at him. For the first time, something flickered in her eyes. It might have been anger. It might have been something colder. "Perhaps," she said softly, "or perhaps you will discover that you needed us more than you ever knew." She turned and walked toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the vast chamber. "Ambassador." This Ix called after her. "You are making a mistake. A foolish, childish mistake. History will remember this moment as the beginning of humanity's end." Yuna stopped at the door. She did not turn around.
"History," she said, "will remember this moment."
"But not for the reason you think." Then she was gone. The council members laughed and joked about the dramatic little human and her empty threats. They congratulated themselves on being rid of such annoying creatures. They moved on to other business and forgot about the withdrawal notice within hours. In the weeks that followed, humans began to disappear from council space. Quietly, efficiently, without drama or announcement. The human embassy on the capital world closed its doors. Human trade ships stopped arriving at the great ports. Human engineers, doctors, and scientists packed their belongings and left the worlds where they had worked for decades. Most of the elder species did not even notice. Humans were so small, so quiet, so easy to overlook. They had always moved through the galaxy like shadows, helping wherever they could, asking for little in return. Now the shadows were fading away, and no one thought to wonder what would happen when they were gone. The galaxy was about to learn a very hard lesson. Some debts cannot be ignored. Some kindnesses cannot be forgotten. And some species, no matter how small and quiet they seem, should never be underestimated. 6 months after the humans left, the first problems began to appear. Counselor Bryn noticed it before anyone else. Her species, the Kathrani, controlled 12 agricultural worlds that fed nearly a quarter of the galaxy. For generations, their farms had produced more food than any other civilization. They were proud of this. They believed it made them essential, but the crops were dying. Bryn stood in the middle of a vast field that should have been golden with grain. Instead, the plants were brown and withered. The soil had turned gray and lifeless. Her agricultural experts stood around her, looking confused and frightened. "What happened?" she demanded. "This field produced 10 million tons of grain last season. Now it looks like a desert." The chief scientist, a nervous Kathroni named Oryx, wrung his 4 hands together. "We do not know, Counselor. The soil has lost all its nutrients. The microorganisms that kept it healthy are gone. It is as if the land simply died." Bryn felt cold fear creeping through her body. "This is happening on other worlds too, is it not?" Oryx nodded miserably. 7 worlds so far, and more every week. She closed her eyes and tried to remember. 20 years ago, the Kathrani had faced a similar crisis. A plague had swept through their farming worlds, killing the beneficial organisms in the soil. They had been facing mass starvation when a young human scientist named Minho had arrived with a solution. He had developed a special compound that restored the soil and made it even more fertile than before. The Kathrani had accepted his gift gratefully and then promptly forgotten about him. He had asked for nothing in return. It simply wanted to help. "The compound," Bryn said suddenly. "The one the human created. We have been using it for 20 years. Do we know how to make it ourselves?" Oryx's face went pale. We never learned, Counselor. The human provided it freely. We assumed he would always be there to make more." "Contact the human homeworld," Bryn ordered. "Offer them any price they want. We need that compound." 3 days later, Oryx returned with devastating news. "They're not responding, Counselor. No human world is responding to any communication. It is like they have vanished completely." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. On the Desix homeworld, the great orbital defense platforms began to malfunction. These massive stations protected the planet from attack. They were the pride of the Vesix military, armed with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. General Korath stood on the command deck of the primary platform, watching warning lights flash across his console. Half of the targeting systems were offline. The shield generators were failing, and the power cores were overheating. "What is wrong with these systems?" he demanded. "They are only 15 years old. They should function perfectly for another century." His chief engineer, a young Vessex named Vrel, looked terrified. The guidance systems were upgraded by a human general, a man named Doyun. He spent 3 years improving every aspect of our defenses. He made them 10 times more effective. And he also installed the maintenance protocols. They require human biometric confirmation every cycle. Without that confirmation, the systems slowly shut down. We cannot override the lockouts. We do not understand the code well enough. Korath slammed his fist against the console. "Are you telling me that our entire planetary defense depends on a human who is no longer here?" "Yes, General. And it gets worse. Doyen also upgraded our early warning systems, our communication networks, and our emergency response protocols. All of them have the same confirmation requirement.
Ow.
All of them are failing." The general stared out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vorath swarm was waiting. They had retreated after consuming the human colonies, but they were always hungry, always watching. They learned that the Desic's defenses were failing. "Find that human," Korath growled. "Find him and bring him back. Use any means necessary." But Doyan was gone. Like all the other humans, he had simply disappeared. His quarters were empty. His personal files had been deleted. There was no trace of where he had gone. On a medical station orbiting a dying star, doctors watched helplessly as their patients deteriorated. The medical nanites that kept them alive were running out, and no one knew how to make more. A human doctor named Jisoo had designed them 10 years ago. A miracle of technology that could cure diseases the elder species had struggled with for millennia. She had shared the nanites freely, asking only that they be used to help people. Now she was gone, and her miracle was fading away. In the great ports of the trade worlds, merchants waited for shipments that never arrived. The safe routes through the nebula of whispers, which human navigators had mapped over decades of careful work, were becoming dangerous again. Ships were disappearing. Cargo was being lost. Trade was slowing to a crawl. The council finally called an emergency session. The 12 thrones were full, but the mood was very different from 6 months ago. There was no laughter now. It was only fear. "How did this happen?" Counselor Bryn demanded. "How did we become so dependent on them without realizing it?" "High Arbiter." Desik shifted uncomfortably on his throne. He remembered laughing at Ambassador Yuna. He remembered calling her species weak and foolish. Now he was beginning to understand what she had meant about needing them. "They were always so quiet," he said slowly.
Ow.
"They never demanded recognition. They never asked for power or influence. They just helped. Wherever there was a problem, a human would appear and solve it. We took it for granted. We assumed they were simply eager to please their betters." Bryn made a sound of disgust. "They were not trying to please us. They were being kind. And we repaid their kindness by letting 3 billion of them die." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, the elder species began to understand what they had lost. And somewhere in the darkness of space, the Vorath swarm was beginning to move again. 2 years after the humans departed, the Galactic Council was falling apart. The problems that had started as small cracks had become massive wounds. Famine spread across the Kathrani agricultural worlds. Without the soil compound, they could not grow enough food. Billions of people were going hungry. Riots broke out on a dozen planets. The Kathrani government barely maintained control. The Vessex defense grid had failed completely. Their great orbital platforms drifted in space like dead whales, weapons cold and useless. When the Vorath swarm tested their borders with small raiding parties, they could do nothing but watch. Every week, more colonies went dark. More distress signals went unanswered. Trade had collapsed. The safe routes through the nebula of whispers were now death traps. Without human navigators to guide them, ships simply vanished. Merchants refused to make the journey. Goods piled up in warehouses while distant worlds starved for supplies, and then the message came. It appeared simultaneously on every communication network in council space. Every screen, every console, every data terminal displayed the same words. The voice that spoke them was calm and measured. Greetings to the citizens of the Galactic Council. My name is Taiyang. I speak for the human species. In homes and offices across 100 worlds, people stopped what they were doing and listened.
I know.
You have noticed that things are not working as well as they used to. Your crops are failing. Your defenses are crumbling. Your trade routes are becoming dangerous. You are probably wondering why. Taiyang paused for a moment. When he continued, his voice was still calm, but there was something cold beneath the surface. The answer is simple. We stopped helping. On her throne in the council chamber, Counselor Bryn felt her blood turn to ice. For 40 years, humanity worked quietly throughout council space. We solved your problems. We fixed your mistakes. We gave you our knowledge freely, asking for nothing in return. We did this because we believed we were among friends. We believed that if we ever needed help, you would stand with us. Another pause. Longer this time? 3 years ago, the Vorith swarm descended on our colonies. 3 billion of our people died while we begged this council for help. You watched our children burn and called it a regional matter. You taught us a valuable lesson that day. You taught us that friendship means nothing to you. You taught us that kindness is weakness. You taught us that we were alone. High Arbiter Thessex gripped the arms of his throne so hard that the crystal cracked beneath his claws. So we left. And we took our help with us. We did not sabotage your systems. We did not plant hidden traps. We simply stopped doing the work that you never noticed we were doing. Everything that is failing now is failing because you never learned how it worked. You never asked. You never cared. You assumed we were primitives, and so you never realized that we were holding your civilization together. The message continued playing across the galaxy. In military headquarters, generals stared at their useless weapons and understood how badly they had been outmaneuvered. In hospitals, doctors looked at their dying patients and finally grasped the true cost of their arrogance. We want nothing from you now. We ask for no apology. We seek no revenge. We are simply gone. You will have to solve your own problems from now on. You will have to protect your own worlds. You will have to find your own way through the darkness. Taiyang's voice softened slightly, but the cold remained. Good luck. You will need it. The message ended. Silence filled the council chamber. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Counselor Bryn rose from her throne and walked to the center of the room. Her face was pale. Her 4 hands trembled at her sides. We did this, she said quietly. We brought this upon ourselves. We had allies who would have stood with us through anything, and we threw them away because we thought they were beneath us. High Arbiter, Thessex tried to sound confident, but his voice cracked. They are bluffing. They need us as much as we need them. This is just a negotiating tactic. If we wait them out, they will come crawling back. Before Bryn could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber with a message. He was shaking so badly that he could barely speak. High Arbiter. The Vorath. They have broken through the outer defense line. A full swarm. Millions of ships. They are heading for the Thessex homeworld. The color drained from Thessex's face. Without his orbital platforms, without his early warning systems, without the defensive grid that Doyon had built, his planet was defenseless. Contact the humans, he said desperately. Tell them we will give them anything. Territory, resources, political power, whatever they want. The aide shook his head miserably. We have tried, High Arbiter, every communication frequency, every diplomatic channel. They are not responding to anyone. Thessex looked around the chamber at his fellow council members. For 10,000 years, they had ruled the galaxy. They had believed themselves wise and powerful and eternal. Now they were about to learn what it meant to stand alone. And somewhere in the silent darkness between stars, the humans watched and waited. They had not forgotten the screams of their dying colonies. They had not forgotten the council's indifference. They had not forgotten anything, but they were patient. They could wait a little longer. The lesson was not yet complete. 5 years after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council existed in name only. The Vorith swarm had consumed half of these X territory. Millions of his people were dead. Millions more lived as refugees on other worlds, begging for scraps and shelter. The great High Arbiter, who had once laughed at humanity from his crystal throne, now ruled over ruins. The Kathrani famine had killed billions. Their mighty agricultural empire had collapsed into chaos. Counselor Bryn spent her days trying to hold together what little remained, but she knew it was hopeless. Without food, civilizations could not survive. Without hope, people stopped trying. The other council species had turned on each other. Old alliances crumbled. Ancient enemies remembered their hatred. Border wars erupted across the galaxy. Ships that should have been fighting the Vorath were instead destroying each other over scraps of territory that would soon belong to the swarm anyway. In the middle of this chaos, High Arbiter Thesix made a decision born of pure desperation. He would go to the humans himself. His flagship was old and damaged. Its weapons barely worked. Its shields flickered and failed. But it was still fast enough to cross the vast distance to human space. He brought no fleet with him, no guards, no symbols of his former power. He came as a beggar, and he knew it. When his ship reached the border of human territory, he expected to find empty space, abandoned colonies, the remnants of a destroyed civilization. Instead, he found something that stopped his heart's cold. The humans had rebuilt everything: massive space stations, orbited healthy green worlds. Fleets of ships patrolled the borders, sleek and powerful and unlike anything he had ever seen. Cities glittered on planet surfaces, larger and more advanced than before the Vorath attack. In 5 years, humanity had not just survived, they had flourished. A single human vessel intercepted his flagship. It was small but moved with a speed and grace that made his own ship look like a dying animal. A communication channel opened, and a woman's face appeared on his screen. She was young, with short dark hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple naval uniform with a captain's insignia. Her name was Yunji. "High Arbiter Thesix," she said. Her voice held no emotion. "You are a long way from home." Thesix tried to maintain his dignity, but it was hard when his ship was falling apart and hers could destroy him with a single shot. "Captain, I come seeking an audience with your leaders. I wish to discuss cooperation." Janji raised an eyebrow. Cooperation. That is an interesting word. The Vorath threaten us all, Thesix said quickly. They will not stop with the Council. Once they have consumed our worlds, they will come for yours. Surely you understand that we must stand together. We understand perfectly, Yunji replied. We understood that 10 years ago when we begged your council for exactly that kind of unity. When we watched our families die and asked for help that never came, Essex lowered his head. We were wrong. We made a terrible mistake. We were arrogant and blind and cruel. I see that now. I am not asking you to forgive us. I am asking you to help us survive. Yonji studied him for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes, but it was not pity. What do you offer in return? Anything, Thesix said immediately. Territory, resources, political authority. The Council will give you whatever power you want. We will make your species the rulers of the galaxy, if that is what it takes. Youngji smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You still do not understand, do you? We do not want your power. We do not want your territory. We do not want to rule your galaxy. Then what do you want? Nothing. The word fell like a stone. We want nothing from you, High Arbiter. Not your apologies. Not your gifts. Not your submission. Thesix felt despair crushing his chest. Then you will let us die? All of us? Billions of innocent people who had nothing to do with the Council's decision? Yunji's expression softened slightly, and for just a moment, Thesix saw the kindness that humans had once shown freely to everyone. It made his shame even worse. Now she said quietly, we will not let you die. We are going to save your galaxy. We are going to destroy the Vorath swarm. We are going to rebuild the trade routes and restore the food supplies and repair everything that is broken. Hope flared in Thesix's hearts. You will help us? No, we will save the galaxy despite you. Not for you. We will do it because there are innocent people suffering who do not deserve to die for the crimes of their leaders. We will do it because it is right. We will do it because that is who we are. Yonji leaned forward, and now her eyes were hard. But when we are finished, the Galactic Council will be nothing. A memory. A cautionary tale that parents tell their children about what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. The elder species will never rule again. They will sit at the table as equals or not at all. Desek felt his world collapsing around him. Everything his species had built over thousands of years, gone. All their power, all their authority, swept away by the very people they had dismissed as primitives. And if we refuse? He asked weakly. Yonji shrugged. Then you die. The swarm will consume your worlds, and no one will mourn you. The choice is yours, High Arbiter. But I suggest you think carefully. This is the last mercy you will ever receive from us. She cut the transmission without waiting for a response. Desek sat alone in his broken ship, surrounded by the evidence of human power and progress, and understood at last how completely his people had lost. Not through war or conquest, but through the simple act of being abandoned. By those they had wronged, the humans had turned their backs on the Council, just as the Council had once turned its back on them, and now. Whether the elder species lived or died depended entirely on human mercy. It was. Desek realized exactly what they deserved. The war against the Vorath swarm lasted 3 years. It was the bloodiest conflict the galaxy had ever seen. The swarm numbered in the billions, a vast hungry tide that had consumed hundreds of worlds. They feared nothing and negotiated with no one. They existed only to feed and spread and feed again. But humanity had prepared for this moment. In the 5 years since their withdrawal, they had not been idle. They had studied the swarm. They had developed weapons specifically designed to kill them. They had trained soldiers and built fleets and planned strategies for every possible scenario. Admiral Junho commanded the human navy. He was a quiet man with gray hair and steady hands who had lost his entire family in the original Vorath attacks. He never spoke about his loss, but everyone knew the fire that burned behind his calm eyes. His sister Soyen served as his chief strategist. She had a mind like a computer and a heart that refused to accept defeat. Together, they transformed the human military from a scattered defense force into the most dangerous fighting machine the galaxy had ever known. The first major battle took place at the Korath Nebula. A swarm fleet of 2 million ships faced a human force of only 50,000. By conventional wisdom, it should have been a massacre. The humans should have been overwhelmed in hours. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, the swarm fleet was destroyed completely. Human losses were minimal. Word spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The primitives had done the impossible. The newcomers had broken the back of the swarm in a single engagement. Species that had cowered in fear for years suddenly found hope again. But the humans did not fight alone. In the years since their departure, they had built alliances with the forgotten species of the galaxy. The races that the Council had exploited and ignored for millennia. The refugees and outcasts who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. These allies fought, alongside humanity with a ferocity that surprised everyone. They had scores to settle with the Council almost as deep as the humans did. They were happy to watch the elder species humbled while they rose to take their place. Battle after battle. The human coalition pushed the swarm back. They liberated, conquered worlds. They rescued survivors from devastated colonies. They brought food to the starving and medicine to the sick. Wherever they went, they left hope behind. The final battle took place at the heart of Vorath territory, around the dark world where the Swarm Queen made her nest. She was an ancient creature, vast beyond imagination, a living mountain of hunger and malice. For thousands of years she had directed her children to consume and destroy. She had never known fear. She learned it that day. Admiral Junho led the assault personally. His fleet burned through the swarm defenders like fire through dry grass. Human soldiers landed on the dark world and fought their way to the Queen's chamber. Soyen coordinated the attack from orbit, anticipating every swarm movement before it happened. When Junho stood before the queen at last, she tried to speak to him. Her voice was like thunder, like the screaming of a billion dying worlds. Why? She asked, why do you fight so hard? You could flee. You could hide. Why do you come to destroy me? Junho looked at the creature that had killed his wife and children, that had murdered 3 billion of his people, that had nearly brought his species to extinction. Because someone has to, he said simply. Because if we do not stop you, no one will. Then he gave the order, and the queen died in fire. The war ended that day. The swarm, without their queen to guide them, fell into chaos. They scattered and fled and eventually faded into history. The great enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was gone. Humanity had one in the years that followed. The human coalition rebuilt what had been destroyed. They restored the trade routes. They revived the dying agricultural worlds. They repaired the defense systems and healed the sick and fed the hungry. They did everything the Galactic Council had failed to do. They did it without asking for payment or praise. A new alliance rose from the ashes of the old one. It was not built on hierarchy or domination. It was built on equality and cooperation, and the simple idea that all species deserved respect. The former. Council members came eventually. They came humbled and broken, begging to join this new order. High Arbiter, Desix was among them. His one-sprout shell, cracked and dull. His arrogance burned away by years of suffering. Ambassador Yuna met them in a simple room on a human space station. She was older now, her black hair streaked with gray. The years had been hard, but her eyes still held the same quiet strength they had always held. Want to join us? She said. It was not a question. Desix lowered his head. We have nowhere else to go. Our empires are gone. Our power is broken. We ask only for a place at the table. Yuna studied him for a long moment. Then she gestured to an empty chair. Sit. Desix sat down carefully, as if afraid the chair might reject him. Humanity believes in second chances, Yuna said. We believe that people can change, that species can learn, that the mistakes of the past do not have to define the future. Desix felt something loosen in his chest, something that might have been hope. But you will never rule again, Yuna continued. You will never command. You will never dismiss another species as primitive or unworthy. You will sit at this table as equals, nothing more and nothing less. The days of elder and younger, of masters and servants, are over, forever. Desix nodded slowly. We understand. We accept. Yuna smiled then, and unlike the cold smile that Captain Yunji had shown him years ago, this one held genuine warmth. Good. Then let us begin. Centuries later, historians would argue about when humanity truly became the heart of galactic civilization. Some said it was during the war, when they broke the swarm. Others said it was in the rebuilding that followed. They showed mercy to those who had shown them none. But the wisest scholars knew the truth. Humanity had always been the heart of the galaxy. Even in those early years, when they wandered quietly from world to world, solving problems and asking for nothing. They had been shaping the future. They had simply been waiting for the rest of the galaxy to catch up. And now, at last, the galaxy understood what humanity had known all along. True strength was not measured in weapons or territory or political power. True strength was measured in kindness, in patience, in the willingness to help others even. When they did not deserve it, the humans had remembered every lesson the galaxy taught them, and they had chosen to be better.